Hi, Jeremy here, Modern Vitality. In today's video, how to activate your animal healing instincts. We're going to be looking at a very deep topic. And this has to do with transitioning through the phases of problem solving, meaning when you have a health problem, for example, a lot of times when we start on our path, on our journey, we need external help. We need external advice. We need external research. We need external knowledge. We need external certainty. We need a plan, which is normal. It's okay to need that plan. However, and as we evolve, as we start to get the hang of things, the best possible case scenario is then that we start to internalize that plan, which means we start to deepen our own instincts and our own intuition. And I'm going to show you some examples of what I'm talking about here in this video, how to do that and how to start tapping into that for yourself. This is one of the ways that we start to shift towards medical independence over time instead of a lifetime of increasing dependence on interventions like pharmaceuticals and supplements and herbs and practitioners and everything else, right? Which is lovely and great in the beginning when we need it, when we need to set up a structure. But ultimately, long-term, I find the people I work with do the best when we set everybody up for long-term success, which requires an internal transition and internal shift over time. So let's get started. Our culture is addicted to certainty, okay? This is one thing that we have to understand. We have a certainty addiction, okay? I'm gonna come back to this. We're gonna take this whole thing apart, right? But we have to start with this premise where everybody realizes that we come into the world with a cultural lens that's automatically weighted towards addiction to certainty. All right, and there's a lot of reasons for this, and I'm going to expand on this, but you need to have that. I'm going to put that now so that your subconscious can start chewing on that while we talk about the rest of this topic, right? So last night I was sitting outside and it was getting dark out, and it was, the sun had gone down a while ago and it was just starting to fade. The light was just starting to fade out. It's that sweet spot from twilight, right? And fortunately, I just put the kids to bed, so they were going down and calm down, and I had a minute to kind of sneak out and just sit and take in. The stars were starting to come out and just take in the evening. And one of the things that happened was this deer, this little buck, right? 4 or 5 point buck, still had kind of velvet on his antlers, was just walking down the street right in front of my house, right? Taking a nice slow stroll, just moving calmly. Now, I was sitting outside and I was wearing all white and I was sitting on white patio furniture. And I think I blended in rather well. Of course, this deer could smell me from a mile away, right? And that's nothing to do with my hygiene practices, right? That's just because they're very sensitive that way. They have a olfactory. They can smell a lot of what's going on. And we're going to come back to this smell power too. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But so obviously this deer knew I existed, right? It'd be silly to think the deer didn't know I existed at all, right? However, what I will say is that I was sitting very calmly. My colors were blended into my background. And I wasn't moving at all. I was sitting totally still and I was just thinking my thoughts, right? Just relaxing, resting. And the deer walked by and I'm sure it was aware of me, right? And while I was thinking about the deer, I was thinking, you know what? One of the things I was considering is the animal healing instincts that we all have, right? And this was kind of fortuitous that this deer came strolling by. And I thought, I'm going to engage with this deer, right? Caveat, no deer. I didn't harm any deer, right? No animals were harmed for this video. I'm going to engage with this deer and I'm going to see if we can have an instinctual conversation. I just want to see what happens, right? And this is something that I've picked up from martial arts training, is this kind of idea of what type of energy you're projecting. So for the deer, I realized the deer was having a very peaceful energy walking on the street, and I was having a very peaceful energy. And I was just thinking, what would happen if I suddenly turned myself into a predator? If I suddenly just projected predator energy at the deer, right? I just want to know what'll happen. So what I did was I didn't move my body at all. I didn't move a muscle. I just changed my internal state. I just went from placidly sitting there to basically thinking about getting that deer. I turned myself into a wolf internally. Right? I just conjured some of that type of energy, this just predator energy where all of a sudden the deer is food. I'm locked on, right? And I'm going to get it, right? And I just created that energy in myself. And I'm telling you this story. This takes so much longer to explain the story. It took a blink, right, for this to actually happen. As soon as I gave myself permission to do that, it already happened. It was happening. Okay. I went, okay, I'm going to open up the floodgates on predator energy and and I could feel the adrenaline. up in my chest, and I could feel it projecting out at the deer, right? Poor deer, just taking a walk, minding its own business, right? But what I found really interesting was that the moment I did that and I felt my energy going at the deer, and again, I didn't move or anything like that, but the deer who was walking by, right, just minding its business, as soon as I made that shift, the deer goes like that and just looks at me, just checks. Really interesting, right? So what happened here? And there are different ways to interpret this, but for us, I think the best thing to do is to keep it with this instinctual level of knowing, this instinctual level of communication. Okay? And what happened was the deer, I think, felt my intent. The deer was calm and walking calmly because it felt like it was in a calm environment. And as soon as that environment changed with the subtlest of intention, the deer picked up on that, is attuned to that. These are prey animals. This is part of their survival, right? And so the deer felt something, very subtle, but immediately turned to look right at me, right? So it felt something, and then it looked to try to confirm with its other senses. You see, we have, if you consider our sixth sense or our more energetic sense to be kind of vague, and our other senses to be more concrete, right? Like seeing and hearing. For humans, we're not such big smellers, right? We don't smell things to confirm. We look at them. Yeah. So we're very visual and also auditory, usually. Now, different people, of course, have different preferences and different strengths and all that. But in general, we like to look at things to kind of double check. And same thing for that deer. The deer turned to look to get a visual because it could feel a disturbance, a literal disturbance in the force, right? Something's weird in this environment. I'm going to look and kind of confirm that with a different sense. Okay? Really important. And it looked, and then its visual confirmation was like, it's just this guy sitting on his couch. I don't know what his problem is, but he's not making a move on me. He's not doing anything. And the deer immediately, was walking and kind of looked and then just checked and then just kept walking, ignored me, right? I was deemed not a threat. I'm not scary enough, right? So what are we doing here in terms of our own ways of listening? Because the deer, I can tell you right now, the deer didn't talk itself out of what it felt. Okay? The deer felt something. Hey, this jerk, is projecting energy at me. I feel it. And the deer didn't just keep walking and ignore it and talk itself out of that and go, no, I'm sure everything's fine. That would be weird. I don't know why I would feel that. I'm silly. I'm different. I shouldn't trust myself. No, the deer was like trained, animal instincts, trusts them, relies on them for survival, turns and looks just to check. Let's get some confirmation. It's worth looking, right? So when we have these feelings, when we get our own instinctual feelings, what do we do with them? Do we ignore them? Do we sweep them under the rug? Do we not even feel them in the first place? Like, how many people are so tuned out and numbed out from their body that they can't even perceive that? Right? That happens too. And it's nobody's fault. This is just part of our cultural conditioning. And again, I'm going to come back to the cultural conditioning too. Now, it could be argued that the deer didn't have some energetic sense. Maybe the deer, with its heightened sense of smell, as I mentioned, maybe something changed in me. Maybe when I changed my intention, I had more adrenaline and some different pheromones came, and just basically instantly the deer could smell that and picked up to the smell. Maybe it wasn't just a felt perception. Maybe. Either way, the deer trusted that, first of all, the deer was sensitive enough, however it was coming through, the smell or some kind of felt sense, right? Sensitive enough, could actually feel the thing, the change. And then second of all, trusted what it was feeling enough to investigate further and take a look, right? Where are we? Where are you on that spectrum? Can you feel these things? Do you get vibes? A lot of the people I work with, a lot of people in our group, very empathic. A lot of empaths, a lot of feeling. I've talked to before about canaries and empathy and all this. It's super common, especially with complex chronic health conditions, super common. Now, can we control that? Can we train it? Can we make it so it's not just a burden, right? That's part of the story of evolving our own internal state, our own internal health, of course. But a lot of people can feel. Some people can't, right? A lot of people can. And then the next stage is actually honoring that, listening to that and going, I feel something. What do I do next? How do I act on this? Or do I just ignore what I feel? I got a bad vibe, but I just didn't want to be rude, so I just stayed around, right? those kinds of things. Think about social interactions. I've had people coming through, like we do our program, they're going through the stages and getting their health back, and all of a sudden now they're up to socializing again, right? I was kind of shut in, reclusive. I didn't have energy for these things. Now I'm out seeing people again. And then an interesting thing happens, because then the tide turns where now they're socializing, and now that becomes kind of a trigger because it's like too much of a good thing, right? Oh, I could feel myself getting maxed out on social interaction, and I didn't want to be rude. So I just stayed at the party, stayed at the dinner, stayed wherever for even longer. And then I got totally drained, and then I was wiped out the next day and had a flare, right? These kinds of things happen. We learn the hard way sometimes about ignoring our feelings, but we get that animal instinct. I think I've had enough socializing for tonight. I'm out of here, right? But the party's not over, but we haven't had dessert, but they haven't done the finale. Yeah, that's okay. I'll, see you later. Love you. Bye. Right? Act on it. Take the intuition, take the things you're feeling, internalize them, right? Don't ignore them and start to act on them. It can be as simple as the deer turning its head. Hey, what's going on over there, right? You're taking some kind of action. Over time, this builds a positive cycle, a virtuous cycle, where you're training your intuition, right? By honoring it, by listening to it. This never stops, by the way. It's not like you're just done. You just master this, right? It's not like I'm on top of my mountain making these videos and saying, hey, here's what you do. Here's how you do it. I've mastered it. It's an evolving process, but that is the process. You have to keep giving yourself opportunities to practice. So when you have your intuition, your instincts, whatever it is, you know something in a way that you can't necessarily articulate. I would encourage you, right? Honor that, pay attention to it, do something with it. It doesn't have to be something crazy or rash, right? But do something, even if it's just turning your head to look a little further. If the subconscious part of your mind is picking up on something, the next thing to do is point your conscious mind at it as well. And then you can get those two sides talking, get a consensus, and make a decision, right? Think about that. We have, as I mentioned, an addiction in our culture to certainty. And this is a problem, right? And I think there are deep roots of this that come from human existential fears of death and fears of uncertainty. And it's in our culture, it's everywhere. We want certainty. And what I can tell you is that we have an addiction to certainty, which then leads to an addiction to quantities and measurements and numbers and the rational, logical side. And the reason why for that is because nobody can argue with a number, right? Qualities are subjective. Your mileage may vary. The example I usually give when I speak about these things is the weather. This is like the best example, because for the weather, we may look at the weather forecast, which has a number, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, right? 5 mile an hour winds from the southwest or whatever it is. And we think we have, from that abstraction, we think we have a picture of the day. But really, the best way to understand the weather is to open the door and stand out there and feel it. Yeah, because I don't know about you, but when I'm getting ready to go out for the day, when I'm getting dressed, I don't care if it's 72 degrees or 74 degrees or 68 degrees. Those numbers don't make much of a difference. What matters to me is, do I need a sweater today? Right? Do I need a scarf? Am I going to be chilly? What do I wear? These are all subjective things, because some people may be out in the same day. Oh, it's 68 degrees Fahrenheit, right? I'm out here in a hoodie. You're out here in a t-shirt. Who's right? Well, there's subjectivity. There could be argument, right? There's different perspectives. That creates uncertainty of who's right when that's the frame, right? This is a frame we don't need to have on reality, but we do. We want to know who's right. Well, who's right is a number. You can't argue with a number. So we lean towards the numbers. It gives us a sense of certainty. This happens in medicine too, of course, right? We see a lot of this. Lab tests, cholesterol levels, blood pressure. It goes on and on and on. A lot of people I work with are about done feeling like a number. And also, I mean, how does that go when you get sometimes you get your labs back and all your numbers look good, but subjectively you still don't feel good. And they say, oh, well, based on this, nothing's wrong. Looks good. You're healthy. I don't feel healthy. I'm exhausted. I got brain fog. Everything hurts. My morale is very low. I'm getting anxious. I can feel my heart thumping through my chest. My sex drive's gone. My digestion's shot, right? How can you tell me I'm healthy? Well, according to the numbers, you're healthy, right? We have this. This isn't just in medicine. This isn't just in the weather. It's everywhere in our culture. is we have this addiction to certainty. With numbers comes certainty. With quantities comes certainty. You will see people leaning towards the rational, logical, what can be justified and not argued with, because when we stand behind it, we feel certain. Well, the lab says there's nothing wrong, so I'm certain about this number because you can't argue with it because it's on paper, right? Oh, the weather says 68 degrees, so it's warm out. Can't argue with it because it's 68, right? Is it warm? Well, to me it is, to you it's not. There's some subjectivity, right? But we can't argue with the number. 68 is 68. This is everywhere. We always want to have some semblance of certainty that we can hide behind, and that includes how we think about things. So if we have a rational thought process, a logical thought process, we feel safer with that. We feel less weak because we know we could defend it by explaining it. However, that deer walking down the street that looked at me, if another deer said, "Hey, Bill, why did you turn and look at that guy?" Right? The deer would say, "I felt something. I don't know, I just felt something." Right? And how brave it is to stand behind that justification. Something that you can't explain and quantify and hide behind the false sense of certainty. Right? It's a false frame. Instead, put that down and say, something didn't feel right. I thought I'd check it out. That's a different kind of strength there, right? Very different. You need to start to trust these instincts, especially around your health and your healing. Our body's talking to us all the time. We get gut feelings, we listen to our heart, right? There are these different visceral ways that we talk about this. Tune into that. A lot of our society, for better or for worse, has leaned away from emphasizing that kind of knowing, that kind of intuition, those kinds of animal healing instincts. I'm here to tell you that you're probably suspecting that there's some truth to what your body's saying, and I would encourage you to cultivate that, to listen to that, to grow it, right? Now, what do we do? Okay, because here's where it starts to break down. What do we do when we don't know how to act on these things? Meaning, you may feel an instinct, you may feel a pressure, you may feel a craving, right? But you don't know how to direct it. So for the deer, it's very easy because they feel something, something's weird, turn and look. Okay, I'm going to direct this feeling, I'm going to turn and look, right? However, if you're starting to tune into your body and you're going, I have deep fatigue, or I'm getting a migraine, or I'm, feeling super inflamed, or like my food that I ate yesterday is still stuck right here. Good, tune into that. But then a lot of people get stuck because they don't know what's next. They literally have hit the end of what they know how to do. Right? That's where we come in with our external training, with therapies, going, hey, you need to learn about these, 5 or 6 different herb formulas. You need to learn about these specific breathing exercises. You need to learn this self-care practice. Because now you have a tool set, right? So that when these things do happen, you go, oh, I'm feeling that anxiety come, or I'm feeling like I've been in a building with something that's kind of triggering my inflammatory response, that you now have ways to direct that you can now listen to the subconscious. You can listen to this intuitive information where you don't need somebody to prove to you, like, yeah, it does look like you're getting triggered by the mold in this building or whatever it is, right? Yes, it does look like you're fatigued. We've measured your energy level and it's low. You just know it because you can feel it. And then you know the next course of action. It starts to become instinctual. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, this starts with external therapies. You have to learn things externally. You've got to develop a new vocabulary of healing modalities for yourself. There's a lot of things like this. This is part of what I train people on, right? Stage 1, immune. We look at a lot of things in the immune bucket. So now you've got a complete tool set that you can pick from, right? When you have this intuition. Same thing with digestive. Like digestive system, you need a comprehensive bucket of tools, which includes specific breathing practices that help the digestive system, right? Specific self-care techniques, herbs, all this stuff. Neuroadrenal. Oh, I'm getting a stressor. Right? I'm dealing with difficult situations. I've got people that are stepping over their boundaries. I've got abusive relationships. I've got, somebody that's coming after me for no reason. All these stressors. We have ways to mitigate that, right? You've got to learn, you got to relearn some of these instinctual things so that now you have an outlet to direct that. Same for blood circulation, right? Every one of the stages has corresponding tools that come with it. And what I find is as people learn this stuff, now they become armed. And now we have a way to dial in that transition from externally, like, what should I do? To all of a sudden, I'm feeling this. Now I just need a way to channel it. I need the equivalent of the deer turning its head. Like I need to know how to manifest something that's going to change my situation. You get that, and now you're just moving, right? Now you know what to do. Now you know what kinds of herbs to gravitate towards. You know what kinds of dietary changes to make, right? Not even permanently, just for the next couple days or for, this week or whatever, more foods to eat that emphasize a certain type of energetic change in your body, meaning to cool you down or to warm you up or whatever it is. You start to learn how to navigate through life in a more instinctual way. People get a little bit afraid of this because there's power there, right? And it's a weird kind of power because you can't explain it. It's not always rational and logical. And you can say to somebody else, somebody close to you in your life, well, I do this because of this, and I felt this, so I changed this breathing exercise, and now I'm changing the way nitric oxide is moving in my body, right? Whatever. You can't always explain that stuff. Some of that's my job, right? To be able to re-rationalize these things and understand it from both sides. But when you start moving from a powerful place and you start responding intuitively to what your body needs, there's something there. And it can be sometimes a little bit scary too, because you think, whoa, there's a whole other world of existence here beyond my cultural conditioning of certainty. It's a different kind of certainty. It's a felt certainty. It's not something you can just explain necessarily. But just because it's felt and it's subjective to you doesn't make it any less valuable. And ultimately, as I've mentioned, this is the difference that helps people get long-term medically independent, is being able to cultivate this. I'll tell you another story. Once I was on vacation with my family, and I wound up with like a bronchitis, some nasty thing. A lot of coughing, a lot of just green phlegm. I was pretty much miserable. And what I did was I took some herbs, which is great, and they were very helpful. But another thing I did was I got real weird one night. I just did the weird stuff. And this is another piece of this, is because the people I find that do the best with this kind of work and actually internalizing their healing, they're not afraid to go get weird sometimes, to do things that are uncommon, right? Because animals will do this no problem. If you ever watch, you watch a cat or a dog throw up, they're putting their whole body into like getting the hairball out or getting the throw up out. Like they'll do the weird stuff, right? They'll make the weird noises. They'll do whatever they got to do because they're not self-conscious. What if I make a weird noise, right? No, they got to puke up a hairball or something, right? So they just get it out. It's not a big deal. I did the same thing with the phlegm. I went out by myself. Actually, I went out and sat on a golf course at night by myself. And I did all this breathing, all this deep, heavy breathing. And if anybody, it was a secluded place. I tried to make it because I know that this isn't normal stuff. People wouldn't know if they walked by, they wouldn't know what they're hearing. They wouldn't know what they were seeing. And if they walked by, they probably would have called the cops, right? There's somebody that's possessed out here on the golf course, right? Because I was using my spine, and I was doing all these movements to start to open my chest and open my lungs. And I was making these crazy breathing sounds, just using my air inside to vibrate the insides of my lungs. And I was physically going in with my breath and shaking out all this phlegm and crap and garbage and just hacking it up. And I basically just gave myself like a phlegm exorcism out in the middle of a golf course in the middle of the night, right? Not my most photogenic moment, I'm not out there with a camera going, hello, everybody, watch this, and doing all this stuff. It can be private. It doesn't have to be public and go on display. But you should have these things in your toolbox, right? So that when it starts to get where your body needs something, you're not just trapped in the status quo of medicating it or whatever else. You can get your hands in there. You can get your fingernails dirty, right? With your insides of your body and just healing and gripping onto things and expectorating and expelling, getting stuff out, right? Even if you're like kind of waving your spine and doing all this weird stuff and moving your fascia around and doing sounds and vibrations and special breath work, like all these things, and just hacking up a big mess of green phlegm, but getting it out of your lungs. I'll tell you what, the next day I felt great. I get to enjoy the rest of my vacation. My family was like, oh, you're not so, you're looking better. You're not so mopey. I didn't want to do anything. I was just all like, oh, I don't feel good, So I had to do something about that. I had to crack it open. There's no plan for this. There's no protocol for this. There's no step-by-step. I didn't go out to the golf course with like, okay, step 1, I'm going to start moving my spine weird. Step 2, I'm going to make some crazy noises. Step 3, I'm going to hack up. It was just like, all right, this stuff needs to move. I'm going to open up. I'm going to kind of get out of the way. I'm going to encourage what needs to happen. I'm going to put some more energy into this. And it's going to be like so nasty to walk up. You wouldn't want somebody walking up on this, really, because I was just moving. It was like an exorcism. But, When you think about pathogens that shouldn't be there, it is an exorcism. You're getting these little demons out. Okay, it's nothing pretty about it necessarily. But I did the work, and I did it from an intuitive place. I didn't try to control or have a mental construct or define my frame of certainty around what needed to happen. I let it happen. Okay, this is one of many, many, many examples, and you probably are doing this stuff too to some extent. And so I would encourage you, open up your mind to that, because the more times you do this, and this is the key here. At first, your intuition doesn't always know what to do. You get these cravings, you don't know what you're craving because you've never had some of our herb formulas before, for example. This stuff's totally foreign. You haven't even ever experienced it. And then once you do, you know what that is, and you go, oh, I know when to use this, right? So you have to be exposed to the tools. Just like if you have, if you've never had a pomegranate before, how could you ever know that you're craving a pomegranate, right? You have to have one so that you can know and have a bank in your memory and go, oh man, I really want one of those sour, little crunchy, oh yeah, that's a pomegranate, right? If you know what it is, you can find it and you can go get it. But if you've never been exposed to it, then you're just going to be kind of pacing around going, I want something, I don't know what it is. So try to free yourself from that situation, right? So first, your intuition has to be listened to, developed and listened to, just like the deer, right? And then two, you have to have something to aim it at that's productive, and that'll give you positive feedback. So you have to start to know how to move, how to breathe, what these herbs are, right? All this kind of stuff. And then number three is you need to actually complete these loops where you feel something, act on it, and then get some kind of result, right? Positive feedback. Now, the more cycles you do, the more loops you do, the more you practice this, the stronger your intuition gets, the more developed your animal instincts get. Your rational mind takes a bit of a back seat and becomes a curious observer. Oh, I don't have to control this whole process. A lot of things are happening on their own. Isn't this interesting? Right? And that's such a better place to be rationally versus trying to micromanage and failing and all this stuff. We need to bring this back. Our culture has an addiction to certainty, right? And then we have this intuition kind of bubbling. I think we can actually balance it back out. And we can use healing as one vector, one way to do this, one way to approach this. Because guess what? You're on a healing path, whether you like it or not. So you might as well get good at it. You might as well use it to make things better in your brain. You might as well use it as a path of also self-development. Make the most of it, right? Don't let this experience go to waste. Okay? Expand out of it. Get as much as you can out of it, including developing your own intuition, developing your own intrinsic instincts, right? Because we have to train this. A lot of people don't trust their intuition because their intuition, it doesn't lead to anything productive and they haven't had good experience with it. So they turn it off. Right? We can bring it back. We can breathe some life back into this. We just have to do it the right way. You got to know where to aim it at. You need to know, right, what stage you're in. You need to know what kinds of interventions to use. Give it a chance to be right, and then let it practice, and then let it get strong, because it will. It will. And then you become a little bit more formidable, right? Which sometimes is the scary part for people, because they go from being sick and I don't feel like I'm very powerful, and we kind of get used to that. And then all of a sudden you start to get this personal power back, and you're like, holy smokes. I don't even know who I am right now. This is different. And some people embrace that and they do really well. Some people get freaked out by it and they just need a little bit of reassurance that, yeah, they do belong in a powerful position, right? Self-autonomy, it's important. Medical independence, it's important, right? Very important. If you're struggling with a complex chronic health condition, why do it alone? We've got a group. It's amazing. It's international. We've got people from all over the planet, people I'm working with, clients going through the stages. You can be in this group too. It's free. And you can be watching right alongside me, looking over my shoulder. It's a chat group, right? Where everybody going through, if they're having a great day, they're sharing wins, and we're seeing different symptoms going away, different understandings happening about how to activate their animal healing instincts, right? Different levels of ownership over the process. And then what's also really cool is it's reality here, right? It's very transparent, and you being in the group, you get to see everything that's going on. Meaning when somebody has triggers, setbacks, flare up, bad day, right? It's not good. They're backsliding. You get to see what happens there too. People come in with problems. I'm backsliding. I was in stage 3. I think I'm in stage 1. I don't know what to do. You can watch how we troubleshoot that, how we think our way through, how we use our system, right? How we work that, and how we continually develop this algorithm, right, of intuition. It's awesome. So you can be in the group, and again, it's free to join. The description has the link right below this video. You'll find the link. And if I see your application, there's a short application. I need some information so I can find out about you. If you look good, if you look like you're going to be a good fit for what we do and the way we do it, then I'll get you in the group as soon as I can. We keep it cozy, like 100 or 200 people. Tends to fill up, so there may be a wait, but I'll get you in as soon as I can. It might be the next monthly cohort, maybe 2 months. I really try not to make people wait too long, but can't make any promises, but I'll do my best. In the meantime, you might consider subscribing to this channel, liking this video, doing all those sorts of things. And the reason why is because just like we can train our intuition, we can also train algorithms to show us things that are important, that matter. So when you click subscribe or ring a bell or whatever you're doing, you're giving input and you're telling YouTube, hey, show me more stuff like this. I don't want mindless scroll. I want to find things that are actually going to move the needle and help me heal and help me get more power over my life. So take a moment, become the kind of person that clicks the button so that you can start to take power over the algorithm too. Very important. These things are everywhere. So hope that helps you. Let's get you feeling better. Cheers.